All right. Is this on? Yeah? All right, great. Well, nice to be here with everyone. However, last year when I spoke, I think I was the only one with a video. This year, I think I'm the only one without a video, so I feel very inadequate. But I promise I won't make anybody cry. But I am going to talk a little bit. You know, we've had a lot of, you guys have ever done Wordles before? You know, where you take the keywords. And if you think about today, and if we were going to create a Wordle, I was just jotting down some of the terms, you know, relationship, retention, engagement, channels, value, preferences, satisfaction, privacy, and on and on and on, right? And but what all these things really aim at is an experience, right? Because we've had that word used as well today, experience. So at least in my experience of helping my clients create an experience with their customer, it always starts with the data. And we talk about data a lot, and certainly everybody's heard about big data by now, right? And I don't know if there are probably 300 of you in this room right now listening to me. Okay, maybe 40. But I think if everybody wrote down a definition of big data, we would probably have a different definition for each person. So what I want to do today is I want to start by talking about data, not the type of data, but what do you do with data? And I'm not going to make it about big data, right? Big data is just an aspect. And you know, by 2020, nobody's even going to use the term big data, right? Because it's just data. But the point is that and what I'm going to share with you a little bit today is just kind of a framework to think about the data and then how that feeds into analytics, and then how those analytics, how you use those to take action, which that gets us to an experience. If that's okay with everyone. So I already covered my agenda, I'm perfect. And then I'm also going to share with you a little bit about WGBH, which is an interesting, there's a little case study here on how they attack some of these problems. Managing the experience, right? Experience, and did you notice, particularly, I thought the Chick-fil-A video was great because it talked about how people feel, right? And that is what the experience is about, right? I was interested in, has anyone in here ever flown Spirit Airline by any chance? Okay. Yes. And why was that? It was horrible. You didn't have a good experience, did you? So I actually was interested because I was reading this article on the CEO. He must be an interesting character, and obviously the company is apparently doing well financially. But he said something that struck me, which was he was talking about they're serving wine in a can. And the first can is $7, and the second can you can get 2 for $12. Now, I'm not a wine snob, but I enjoy wine, and I know my way around a wine list. And so I thought, gee, wine in a can, that's kind of interesting. As I read on, his point, you know, the discussion was, well, how are people going to react to that? And he said, at 30,000 feet, they don't have a choice. And when I read that, I thought, I'm never going to fly that airline. And then I went back and you know that airline has finished bottom of the 6 categories by the Consumer Report in the ratings of airlines. And you would think, well, okay, so there's an example of a company that their model is to go low price on low airfares, but they got rated lowest for cleanliness. Now, that's a problem in my book. I don't think I would feel very good about that, right? So I'm not looking forward to that experience. On the other hand, I think about my son, one of my sons, who now is 19, but when he was 15, he was involved in this thing called Los Amigos, and he committed for a year to go through this training, and he went to Panama for 8 weeks. In Panama, he was up in some mountain village, and he helped build a park. Okay, that was his project. Now, to get there, they had to raise money. They did a fruit sale. Each person going had to sell 60 boxes of fruit for $20. My son sold 320 boxes of fruit. He's an entrepreneur, and he did a very, very good job, and he actually talked somebody into matching the dollars that he could raise. So he raised a lot of money. But when does anybody in here have any idea what it's like to deliver 320 boxes of fruit? So we have 2 SUVs. So I was going to load up one and have my wife take it, and I was going to take the other one. And my son said to me, he goes, "Dad, these are my customers. I have to deliver this fruit myself." So this turned into a really long process for me because I didn't have a driver's license. So we're driving all over delivering fruit. Now, interestingly enough, he came out of that process with people who wanted to follow him on his adventure, and he ended up with 20 babysitting jobs on top of it. So I thought that was really good. He made those people feel good, right? Now, those are 2 extreme examples, but my point is that when people feel good, they're interested in what you have to say, what you have to bring them, how you do that you develop that relationship. That is nothing new to you guys. You all know that, and you know it as well as I do. But when we think about the experience, this is now the dilemma of the experience, right? This is what stands in our way as a marketer. It's the fragmented data, the fragmented processes, the fragmented culture, and the strategy. Now, you would look at this and you would say, how can you be so fragmented? Well, it's easy, right? It's easy. Because as you think about the explosion of the data and the proliferation of the channels, and the idea that we need to be able to talk to our customers, and how we spring up with niche products, and then we end up spreading our data all over the place, and we have our business rules spread around, it's no wonder that we have a hard time with creating a view of a customer in order to deliver an experience. The fragmented data drives and creates latency. Latency is the enemy of any marketer, as you well know. Because in today's world, and I think someone was saying before, and I think it was the gentleman from Responses, he was talking about campaigns. I frankly don't like the term campaign management. That implies to me an episodic process, old, antiquated thinking. It's hard to break that nomenclature. We happen to use the term interaction because I think it's about creating a dialogue with a customer. It doesn't matter what we use. The point is that what we've done to ourselves here is that we've evolved these things out of niches, right? There's a solution over in the social, there's a solution over in the email, there's a solution over in the SMS, there's a solution in direct mail, there's print, all these things. And as a result of that, we embed fragmented processes. And the processes actually create a barrier to bringing all that data together, right? These problems, bringing data together, is not a technology problem. So you can stop beating up on your IT people, right? Because it's not a technology problem. It's a process problem, and it's a mindset problem. It's a culture problem. So culturally, right, culturally we have our turfs. I was reading an interesting thing about the mindset of a VC, and that managers need to adopt the mindset of a VC. The VC places 10 bets. Some are going to work, some aren't. A manager wants to hold on to their space. By the way, we're all managers, right? So it's a mindset that blocks us a lot and creates a lot of problem. The fragmentation is inherent in our processes today, and the fragmentation is really a fundamental driver to latency. Latency is what gets in our way of being precise, right? And then it is exacerbated because we talk to not people, but personas. And we talk to them, we're talking to devices, we're talking to IP addresses, email accounts, social handles, right? What we do is, because we have limited information, because we haven't brought that data together to turn that into information, we do the best we can with what we've got, and now we end up talking to profiles. Right? So all the discussions that we've had today, really, they're all similar messages, right? We're talking to profiles, not people. That's where we need to get to. And that's a generalization. I don't mean to take anything away from anyone who's got all this solved, by the way. So what are we trying to do here? Well, we're trying to deliver a personalized experience, and it can only be done through precision. And what I believe, and what I talk to my clients about is that there's really kind of a three-legged stool here, right? I happen to call this a virtuous marketing cycle, right? We all know what a vicious marketing cycle is, or a vicious cycle, right? The harder we try, the worse it gets, right? So we're spinning downwards. In a virtuous marketing cycle, or a virtuous cycle, we continue to dump more data in. We get better insights based on that data. Those better insights allow us to execute better, faster, cheaper, right? Those executions then lead to more data or non-data, because a non-response is data, right? So that cycle of mastering your data, deriving insights, and taking action is what is required to be precise. And precision is what's required then to drive an experience. So let's talk about each one of those a little bit. Mastering your data, because I want to get to kind of a framework here, at least a framework that works for me to think about these things. Mastering your data. And I think if I heard it once, I bet I heard it 5 times today already. You know, ask the question. What's the question? You got to know what the question is. You got to know what question to ask. In order to take all that data, the questions that you want answered have to have a context, right? It's interesting what's happening in the big data space, because, you know, we work in big data as well, and big data to me is more of a technique and some technologies. But there are companies that are out trying to sell these big enterprise big data platforms, but that's the worst thing anybody could ever do, because you can't think about all the possible questions that you're ever going to want to ask and have answered, right? So you want to start out with, what are a set of questions? Right? So this is about a proof of concept, a pilot, and execution. Execution is to answer that question. That's what gives us the context. The context then, what we have to do in order to provide that context is that we have to organize the structures. There's a relationship here. We have to basically figure out how we're going to organize that data, and then we need to link that data. And without linkage, data is just data. This gets back to the idea that Dale Renner, Dale Harry Renner, Dale H. Renner, D.H. Renner, I could potentially be many people, I could fall in many profiles, I could be different personas inside of your company, but I'm all the same guy, right? So if I'm not linked, if that data's not linked together, how do you talk to me? How do you create that experience? But all those things, you take all that data, you put it in the funnel, you create you look at it in context, you examine it in context, you organize it, you link it, and you got information. Just put it in and turn the switch on. Now, what's information, right? Well, information has to be relevant, right? Relevancy is what allows us to drive precision. So what's relevance? Well, it's got to be in a context. It's got to pertain to something. Well, it also has to be complete. If information, incomplete information is probably worse than no information. Right? Because what happens is I start to guess then. Right? I got incomplete. It's not fact-based. And so I can really make a lot of bad decisions on incomplete information. It also has, and that gets us into, the accuracy. Well, that's obvious. Now, is there anybody in here in healthcare? No, healthcare. Okay. How about someone who's in, is there anybody here that's in retail? Okay. Healthcare, retail healthcare. Okay. Well, my only point was going to be, since you're the only one that's raising your hand, is that in healthcare, you better be a lot more accurate than in retail, because it doesn't matter as much if I have a little inaccuracy in retail. But if I'm actually telling someone, and the whole healthcare industry is changing very rapidly, and we're looking at outcomes and how to drive outcomes, and healthcare organizations are not going to get paid if you show up with the same disease or the same problem that you were theoretically treated for, et cetera, et cetera. But if I'm going to start talking to people about what they should be doing, treatments, et cetera, I better be pretty accurate about that. And then, of course, current. Today's world, as you guys well know, is that, you don't have time, because there's a transformation that's taken place. Everybody remembers the dot-com crazy days, right? I was actually running a company in those days, and it was the dumbest thing that I've ever no, it's not the dumbest thing I've ever done, but it was the dumbest time I've ever been in, I think. And the point is that back then, everybody said, retailers are going out of business. Brick and mortar, they're old school and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is that we didn't have all the infrastructure in place to actually do that. You could still win on scale. Scale is very important. And now you look at retailers, the retailers are still there, right? And they do a very good job through the internet. And that was, people were looking at that as a transformation. That was the beginning of the transformation. The transformation is taking place now. The transformation is all about who has the power. And the consumer has the power because there's so much information. And when you go shop, who's bought a car lately? Did you get your information from the internet or did you get it from the car dealer? You bet. And so you have more information perhaps than even the sales guy, right? Because I just went and I just recently bought a car, and I got one of those Jeeps where you can take the doors off and stuff. And I said, these doors all come off, right? And the guy said, well, yeah, I think they do on this one, right? And I said, well, no, they do, right? And how does that work? So when you think about what's happening here, the transformation, we're in a transformation, and as a result, everything is faster, right? Everything's faster. So the idea of this real-time streaming of data and being able to decision that, we're no longer thinking about next best offers, but next best actions. And then finally, economical. This has all got to be, there's got to be clear cost benefit to invest in these kinds of things. There's a whole practice or a concept, you should take a look at it when you get a chance. It's called infonomics. And it's the economics around the value of information in a company. And there's a practice that's springing up on how to determine the value of information inside of a company. It's pretty cool, and I think you'd like it. So if that's what information is about, how do we get it? So here's a framework, and maybe this is interesting to you, not sure. But if you look at the lighter shading, the gray shading, those are the things that are in place today, right? We've got transactional data, we've got new data sources coming on, we've got, there's a rationalization and movement process that has to take place. We derive some data out of it, and then we've got usage. So I think that if there are any IT folks in here at all, and we start talking about data quality and ETL, these guys, they eat and sleep, drink this kind of thing. Marketers are going to have to do this as well, right? And what's going to happen? And of course, every vendor who sells any software in this space was really excited about the Gartner report that came out that said by 2017, the chief marketing officer will have a bigger IT budget than the CIO. Okay? That's really exciting, right? Because that tells me where all the money's going is in the customer side, right? So you guys are all on the right side of the next decade, right? Because you're going to be spending a lot of money, you're going to be doing a lot of things, and guys like myself are excited about it as well because I'm right there with you. But I think that it's going to be very important that you have the skill sets in order to become the people who know how to use the data. So the DBA can no longer be in IT, it's got to be over in marketing. The analytics person is going to be in marketing. And by the way, by 2015, there's going to be a 1 million person shortage in the United States of analytics people. So get your checkbooks out because they're going to be really, really expensive to hire. And that is coming, and there's no way that the universities can produce enough people to satisfy that need. So when we look at this, if you look at the gray boxes, we need the ability to do those kinds of things to just stay even, right? In today's world, there's an equilibrium, and if you're staying even, you're losing by definition because your competitors are getting better at this kind of stuff than you are if you're staying even. There's no place to rest in this. Now overlay that with the stuff that's in the blue. This is where we start talking about big data and real-time and in-memory data platforms and data virtualization and advanced analytics and all those kinds of things. That blue represents where this is going. All right? It doesn't represent what you have to do today or, oh my gosh, you're going to go out of business. Well, that's nonsense. But what it does mean is you got to be thinking about these kinds of things in order to actually master your data. Right? If you'll accept that mastering your data is an important aspect of your business. But this is a roadmap. This is a framework of the types of things that really, how you have to think about data, organizing your data, using the data. So what does that mean? Well, look, you've got to capture it, right? Capturing data. It seems like it should be kind of an easy thing to do. Very, very difficult, because remember, we got all those channels, different cadence, variety. It's over here, it's over there, now it's down here. I've got to bring all that together. So I've got to capture it somehow, and I've got to bring it in. And it's important to capture it in the context of not capturing data for the sake of capturing the data. It's in the context of how am I trying to use it? What decisions am I trying to make here that I need that data to make? And then how do I have to utilize that data, right? So the cadence becomes very, very important. And also, I think that it's very important to understand that in today's world, it's important to capture all data. Simple example, clickstream data. It's unstructured data or semi-structured data, depending on how you want to quibble about it. But it's a great place. That's the kind of stuff you can dump into a Hadoop and all that kind of that technology, right? It's a good place to put all that. Well, today people throw a lot of that data away. And why do they do that? Well, because they don't know. It's like clickstream data. It's like, who are these people? Well, if you collect all that data and you're keeping all of the cookies associated with that data, and one day I self-identify, right, as Dale Renner, I say, yes, send me this information. Now what I can do is I can go back and I can interrogate that data. And I say, this Dale Renner guy has been on our website 7 times. And all 7 times he went to this place or these 2 places. This is what I should talk to that guy about. Because now, not only did I identify around what I'm talking about right now on your website, but I've also got, there's a footprint, right? I left the crumbs. And if I'm throwing all that data away, how do I ever use that, right? I can't. So we should be capturing all data. All data. I've got to reduce it, extract it. That's just what that basically means, is I've got to prepare that data to integrate it, right? And when I integrate it, and then I've got to hygiene it, right? And hygiene is standard stuff. It's householding, cleansing, right? I need to know the person, the household, the rooftop. I need to know as much as I can know about that person. And then the next step is I've got to identify that person. The identity resolution is extremely important here. I've got to know that Dale Renner, Dale H. Renner, D.H. Renner, Dale Harry Renner has a house in Massachusetts, Minnesota, Florida. He does these things. He's been to my website. He's bought these things, etc. I've got to know who that person is. It's a persistent key that has to be managed. All right. Now, once I have that, once I know who that person is, I have information. I've created information. And now that information is for purpose, right? And we use this term, back in the old days, we said single view of customer. And then someone said, well, no, you can't really do a single view of customer because there are different views of customers. And we said, okay, now we'll do a 360-degree view of customer. Well, that's circular. Okay. Well, now we do multi-dimensional view of customer. And I think that actually might be right. Because at least working in the environments I've worked in, an insurance company, we have New York Life and AIG and those kinds of companies as our clients. Well, you know what they do is the marketing person's using the system, the sales guys are using the system, the actuarials are using the system, the finance people are using the system. Everybody's got the analytics people are using the system. Everybody has their view of the customer. They're different views, but it's all the same data. And if I'm not using the same data, single version of the truth, now that dates me. How about you guys? Single version of the truth. Somebody remembers that? Yes, the old guys. But the point is that if I'm using different data, I get different answers for different people, and that's why the finance guys argue with the marketing guys about what your sales were. Because I'm looking at different data. If I bring all that together, I've got it all in one place, I've got a multi-dimensional view of the data. That's what we're doing here, is we're creating that, we're turning that, that data into information, but it's for many purposes. So once I've got it, now I've got to derive insights, right? So, derive insights and identify opportunities. Now, today, I think, again, we've used the word analytics a bunch of times, and again, I think if I asked everybody to do a definition of that, we'd have a whole bunch of different definitions. And here's how I think about analytics. I think there are 3 types of analytics, right? One is what we call business intelligence. Not a new term to you guys at all, right? But that's a rear view mirror of what happened, right? That's a different kind of analytic. I'm trying to understand what happened, and I use it maybe for trending, right? But it doesn't help me in a day in, day out basis. It's periodic in nature. The second kind of analytics is more around what I'll call offline predictive analytics, right? And that's what you're doing with your SAS and your SPSS and KXN and R, if anybody's using open source R or whatever it might be. But what we're doing there is it's the traditional 6, 8, 10, 12, however many weeks it takes, move data around a bunch of times, a smart guy, I build a model, I get a score, I use that score, model atrophies over time, I redo the model. That's an offline thing, and it's very pervasive, and I bet 100% of the people in this room have some kind of offline analytics or predictive models. The third kind is the trickier kind, which is the event and streaming analytics. And this is where we talk about using things like techniques, right? Techniques like machine learning, neural networks, where I can score every combination of everything based on streaming data coming in to help me determine next best action, so that when someone goes to my website, clicks go, I'm an insurance company, drops into a call center, the person comes up, gives me some information, and I score that, right? And I'm scoring that. That is not an offline predictive model, right? Offline predictive model is what Amazon uses when I go out and I buy a book and it says, if you like this book, you might like this book. Pretty easy. This is a different set of technologies and processes, and this is where it's going, because if you're in the insurance, and I'm just picking on insurance for a second, but if you're in the insurance world, right, someone is looking for health insurance, they want to buy, right? I don't have time, right? And if I go out and I say I'm interested in insurance, I'm going to get 30 calls from people. After about 3, I'm going to stop taking the calls. So when they're on the phone and they're coming into or on the web and they come into my call center, I need to have that information as quickly as possible to make the best decision as possible. And I want to be routing that to the skill sets and all those other kinds of interesting techniques. So we've mastered our data, we're deriving insights. When we're talking about analytics, we got to know what kind of analytics we're trying to do. And again, it's for purpose, it's in context, right? Context is very important here. And then finally, we take action. Pretty simple. But taking action has to do with what channels, at what time. This is where we start to get into understanding my preferences, right? Because I use those preferences early on as part of the data. I use those preferences when I was driving, when you were deriving those insights. And now I want to basically take that action across those channels in the context of, again, my preferences. When I do this, and I take that data and those insights and I execute, what I want to be able to do is execute from a single place, right? I don't want to have to now go out to other channels. I can't be comprehensive, I can't be really relevant, and I can't be precise if I'm not talking to that person across 2 or 3 different channels in the exact same way. That is a broken record, and I've heard it 3 times today, but I just feel compelled to tell you. So when we think about this, right now we're taking this action. So I was mastering my data, I derive the insights, and I take action. When I take this action, those red arrows are two-way, right? Because somebody clicks, somebody does something, I get more data. So that's just kind of a model that I use, and we bring it all together, right? And basically what's happening here is that I've got data, I'm creating this golden record, this notion of this golden record, and then based on this set of activities, I keep enriching that data, right? So that's kind of a model or a way to think about some of these things. What I want to do is I want to talk just a little bit about WGBH, which is a client of ours. And are you guys, anybody familiar with WGBH by any chance? Yeah, do you donate to them? All right, so I take care of my clients. I'm going to hit all you guys up for money. But WGBH is interesting because they do 65% of all the programming for public broadcast, and they are the behemoth in this space. They're also a major supplier to public radio as well, and you would recognize some of their programs. Frontline, for example, is a great program if you've ever watched it. And of course, it's funded, and they're scared to death, right, because of all the government cutbacks that are going to come their way. And you know, Mitt Romney stubbed his toe when he said he's going to kill Big Bird. Shouldn't have done that. But that's what's happening to these guys, and so they really need to create a clear view of who their donors are, right? Well, I don't know if you guys have these kinds of problems, but this is what they lived with, right? They had all the disparate data sources. There was no system of record. In fact, they implemented Salesforce.com to be their CRM, and somewhere 2 years into it, they of course realized that Salesforce.com is not a marketing system, right? It's a contact management system. And the difference is that marketing systems have records that are this long, and contact management systems have records that are this long. And so you cannot use those for marketing purposes. So you end up with no real record or no system of record. And then a lot of the data conflicts and all those kinds of things. The other thing is that they had a lot of redundancy in segmentation. So this may or may not be familiar to you. They were segmenting, they were looking at segments inside of Salesforce.com, inside of Eloqua, inside of some of their other channel systems. Everybody kind of had their own strategy in that channel because there were people that owned the channels, right? Well, what happens is that they over-message because it's the old spray and pray, right? I don't know who everybody is, but I'll just send a whole bunch of stuff and I'll catch them. So the problem, of course, is that I, as a $10,000 donor, do not appreciate getting a solicitation for $100 and here's the basic program, right? And I find that offensive. And I also think that if you look at households, in their case, they would have multiple donors within a household, and they don't realize that they're in the same household. So it's even possible to send different messaging into the same household to two different people because they're different donor levels, but I'm really treating them as they are two different people in my system. And they don't feel good about that, right? And so that was a real challenge. And as a result of that, like I said, they really got into that you had to just overcompensate because you didn't know who you were talking to for sure. The other thing is that it was a very difficult environment for reporting purposes. So when we started talking about analytics, what analytics are you talking about? The BI, the offline, what are we talking about here, right? And what we found, of course, is probably not uncommon problems that all of you experience as well, I would guess, at some point or another, which is the stuff's all in these different places, really hard to get to. I can't tell while a campaign, right, our old word, campaign, is going. I don't know what the status of that is. I might want to allocate resources somewhere in that process because I'm not getting the lift that I expected. I'm not getting the opens, the click-throughs. I'm not getting the SMS responses back. People aren't coming through my mobile app, but I'm not seeing that in a way that I can reallocate, that I can change and reallocate my spend. And then scalability. And again, limited resources. I love the line, right? I'm going to let you do more with less. Ooh. That's a good one. Because what happens, obviously, is if your business is growing, you need more resources. Technology certainly helps those kinds of things, absolutely, right, from a productivity standpoint. But if I don't have the technology in place, all I can either do is not do the work, or I got to hire more people, right? Volume growth is bad in these environments. If I have budget freezes on the people. So those are the kinds of challenges. So what they did is we actually went about working with them, and we had to bring in 80 sources of data, right? Because Salesforce just becomes it's just another source of data. You've got as I said, 80 sources a day. We bring that in, we figure out who this person is, the 360-degree view, and we execute it across the channels. Now, the other thing that's going on here that I think is very relevant to the discussions that we had is they created My GBH, and that'll be getting rolled out very shortly. Now, My GBH is interesting because it is the place that all people will come through, and it is the way in which they will give a consistent message across all channels. My GBH is not just a website, but it is a capability that does all the authentication, all the preference management, and of course that's possible now, because possible now is embedded in this solution. And all of that activity, regardless of where you come from, will actually go through a single place, and all of the intelligence about every single person will be sourced from the exact same spot. So all the messaging is now going to be very consistent, will be exactly consistent across all the channels, whether it's a mobile app, whether it's your iPad, whether it's your laptop, or whatever it is. So this is fundamentally changing the way in which they're going to have a relationship with their customer. They're fundamentally changing the experience. They're creating the experience, because now the next step is now we're going to start streaming the content out. So these guys have gone about from a place where all this disparate data, where all these issues that they had, to a solution, and they did this in 14 weeks. And now they have the 360-degree view of the customer. We've got everything linked between the donors and revenue recognition. Are there any finance guys in here? No. But the finance guys want revenue recognition, right? They want to know if I'm spending $1 in email and $1 in direct mail and wherever it is, tell me what we're getting for that $1. That's the job of the CFO, is to be the marketer's I guess parent. What we're doing now is we've got integrated cross channels working, and basically what we've done here is we've blown up. We had to start with, what experience are you trying to create? Based on that experience, what questions do we need to answer? Based on the questions that need to be answered, what data do we have to use to do that? And then based on the way we want to interact with our customers, what's the cadence? Because that starts to drive everything. How responsive do I have to be for the experience I'm trying to create? So, I don't know, that's all I got, I think. Oh no, I have one other thing. Here's something to pay attention to as well. Perhaps you'll be interested. The Forresters, Gartners, there's something else that's happening here in the marketplace, and these analysts have, in my opinion, started to become enlightened, because they're now thinking about things. In the old world, we talked about master data management. Ooh, master data management, right? That's really cool stuff, except that data by itself is worthless, right? So what people are now starting to understand is that, and Forresters has launched this master information management, because in their world, the information is about driving an outcome. That's what they're doing. I'm actually on the table helping them to think through how this is going to be, how this has to work together. So it's a breakthrough in the thinking of the analysts, because they're used to thinking about these things very niched out. Now we're thinking about this as taking data, information, and getting an outcome. Gartner is doing the exact same thing, by the way. They've got the Gartner. They're coming up with their customer data management platform, and I'm sure all of you CMOs in here are going to be getting phone calls from them, because they're taking people out of their cross-channel, what am I thinking of? MCCM, multi-channel campaign management, and IMM and MRM, and they're taking people out of that, and they're creating this notion of this customer data management platform. And they're going to come and talk to you guys about doing consulting work with you, because it's about outcomes. So they're there. David Rabb Does anybody follow David Rabb at all? He's an independent. He's an independent analyst. He actually he's got this customer data platform, this in-depth white paper that's coming out. And if anybody's interested in that, I'd be happy to send that to you if you let me know where to send it. I think you'll find it interesting. The other thing that I was going to flash up to you is that Gleanster just came out with this report. It's an intro to big data for marketers. So, you know, what I think could be useful to the people is, you know, as a marketer, how the heck do I sort through all this stuff? What is it really? And I don't want the technical version of it, right? If you want the technical version of it, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards. We can talk about clusters and in-memory processing and lots of stuff, right? I'd be happy to do that. But this might be something that could be interesting to you as well, because it just says, here's what big data means to a marketer. Okay, that's what I got. Thank you.